This is the sermon you didn't hear from the third Sunday of Advent, the Sunday of joy and unexpected surprises. So Elizabeth and Zechariah in Luke 1:57-66 have given birth to their baby, John, and the neighbors are having a couple of reactions to it. They're either afraid or they're awestruck, depending on which translation you read. And everywhere they go, there's just one question on everybody's lips, which is, what will this child become? Now, this isn't a question about, is he going to be an engineer or an artist or an athlete when he grows up? It's not what will this child do, it's what will this child be. And in fact, the question is not just that, but what then will he be? The then refers to their correct understanding that God's hand or power is in this child. And when that's so, that could be fearful or it could be awe-inspiring. So maybe the question is not just what will this child become, but what will become of this child. And even more than that, when, we all have the power of God in us, but in some people it's particularly evident, and those people can really be world-changing. So the question is not just what will become of this child, but what impact it's going to have on the rest of them. Now, we, with the benefit of time, know what John became, who John was. Some of that became evident right from the start. We see it that he's kin to Jesus in a very deep way. The two seem to recognize each other even through the fog of amniotic fluid and skin. Yet these two dance partners have quite a lot of differences from each other. Like John will reside in the wilderness. Jesus spends most of his time in populous urban areas, cities and towns. John strictly doesn't drink alcohol. Jesus loves wine. And they each know which one is the Messiah and which one is not. Yet, despite these really significant differences, people often confuse them for each other, and the confusion is understandable because they are alike where it counts. They are alike in loving God, they are alike in seeking justice, they are alike in confronting cruelty and corruption and speaking truth to power, and in recognizing the costs of doing that. What's more, they value each other. They don't let stylistic differences get in the way of a mutually affirming relationship. Last week, the week before, I talked about Elizabeth and Mary and how their relationship had clues for us about how to live in difficult times. Well, this story has clues about how to live in times that are difficult too, that we ought to try to replicate. So these two men are men who know how to have a heartfelt friendship with each other. They are men who have respect for people who are not men. They are men who are not seduced by power over, but do appreciate the power of God that lives in them. And when somebody does that, it's revealed in characteristics like love and joy and compassion, honesty, and an ability to weep. A few years back, Doug Abrams pulled together a lovely little book about the friendship between Archbishop Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama. It's called The Book of Joy. Each man was in his 80s at the point when the book was written. And Tutu, who had fought against South African apartheid at great cost, was being treated for cancer, and the Dalai Lama was in exile with over 100,000 other Tibetans. Yet both men are famous for their mirth. The author of the book describes the two of them holding hands and laughing and joking together, acting more 8 than 80. It's evident that what these babies became as they grew was both incredibly mature, but also still childlike. Early in the book, Tutu says, with time, as we discover more joy, we can face suffering in a way that ennobles rather than embitters. We have hardship without becoming hard. We have heartbreak without being broken. Discovering more joy, he said, does not, I'm sorry to say, save us from the inevitability of hardship. In fact, he said, we may cry more easily, but we will laugh more easily too. Perhaps we are just more alive. What John and Jesus became as they grew was more alive, more ready to plunge into the Jordan River or into the problems of their day, more wise and caring, more honest and more vulnerable, more alive. Even in death, they became more alive. Their life spread into their followers and multiplied. May we be alive like that, as one body, as individual bodies bearing the life of Christ in us. The poet Nikki Giovanni, a Black queer woman, particularly known both for her frankness about injustice and for her astounding joy, died this past week at age 81. I'm sure I'm not the only one who bought more of her poetry in the wake of that. We did that to keep it alive, to keep her alive. Here's one poem. It's about life itself. It's called Biography. There is a bat in Chile named Micronycteris giovanniae. Dr. Robert Baker named it after me. He discovered it while studying bats and thought the big ears were just like me. Maybe if the bat wrote, she would be a poet. There is a plaque in Lincoln Heights where I went to school, and a plaque in Knoxville across the street where my grandparents lived. I'm also lucky to have awards and daydreams, or is it daydreams and awards? And I'm lucky to be happy at what I do and how I do it. So that is this bio. I'm here, and if I'm missed on emotional soil, a weed will grow. Make me rain. Let me be part of this needed change.